Hey, if you're a security engineer, you're probably well aware that people across your organization are using Gen AI in their day to day job, whether they're in engineering, marketing, sales, or HR. But which applications are they using? And what data are they providing these models? You probably don't want them uploading things like private source code, sensitive user information, or company IP. So today I'm excited to be chatting with Alastair Paterson, co founder and CEO of Harmonic Security, about how Harmonic can give you instant visibility into how your colleagues are using what Gen AI apps and enable them to use Gen AI to become more productive safely. Hey, Alistair, welcome. Great to have you.
Clint, thanks for having me on. Great to speak with you today.
For sure. And my name's Clint. I'm the head of security research at SendGrep and the creator of the TLDRSec newsletter. So today we're going to talk about Alistairs' background, what he was up to before Harmonic, what's happening right now with Gen AI adoption in the enterprise, and then we're going to do a hands-on demo of Harmonic, showing how it can enable your colleagues to be more productive while using Gen AI safely, and give you visibility into all of the Gen AI usage in your org. And at the end, we're going to show some nifty examples of how you can get visibility into specific existing use cases that people are doing that you can then help them productionize potentially. So yeah, before we get into it, Alistair, yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and what you were up to before Harmonic.
Yeah, thanks, Clint. So, yeah, but I'm originally from the UK, as the accent will give away. I started Digital Shadows there in the threat intel space. So that was my sort of previous journey as a founder CEO. Brought me to Silicon Valley. So I moved over here in 2015 when we did the Series A, and been here ever since through the B and the C and an acquisition in 22. So that's kind of how I got here. And then I thought I'd take a bit of time out after Digital Shadows, to be honest. But then November 22, ChatGPT came out and the world changed, as we all know. And I couldn't help myself but get back into building again. And the results, Harmonic. And yeah, we're absolutely trying to help enable this era, right? And accelerate technological adoption in the enterprise.
I like that. Yeah, I always love hearing when people are trying to enable other parts of the business as a security team rather than just slowing things down. So excited to get more into that shortly. Um, so yeah, I'm curious. What do you see is going on right now in the marketplace and then enterprise in terms of how are companies and security teams handling this like blossoming of Gen AI everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real top one or two issue for most companies that we speak to right now. They're under pressure from the business to go faster and adopt all this technology, but the risks are there as well, of course, that they have to manage. And the biggest risk that we hear again and again is the fears about sensitive data leaking out into places it shouldn't go, whether that's becoming part of someone else's training data set or going to a country where you probably don't want your IP going, for example, amongst other things. So we think it's primarily a data issue, and we hear lots of examples all the time. I mean, just today I had a couple of very interesting conversations. One was with a bank. They've started realizing that their employees were using a bunch of unsanctioned AI applications that were not covered by the blocking they were trying to do at category level. So there was about 50 different applications in use, only two of which were sanctioned, and they had a significant number of uploads and data that was flowing into all of these apps, some of which were China hosted, for example, amongst others, and many of which wouldn't have the type of security controls that you'd want around your customer data being uploaded and things like that. The other one I had today was a Bay Area tech company that we're just kicking off a POC with. And one of their motivations for getting the POC going was they'd spotted one of their engineers had uploaded 40 gigabytes of data to an unsanctioned tool, right? So I think the temptation's there for employees because we're all getting used to using this stuff in our personal lives now. We've sort of lived through that consumerization of IT era previously, and now it's here for AI. And it's just very tempting if you can start to automate bits of your job to start using these tools. An example of that, I mean, I think about the graduates coming out now. We ran a POC recently for a very large enterprise where they had a graduate that had recently joined, had been through the security briefing, but somehow still thought it was okay to upload a bunch of source code to some China-hosted LLM applications. And so, yeah, I think it's just happening everywhere, and whether there's visibility or not, unfortunately. But we can't just hold back this era either. So that's the tension that's in the enterprise today, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe a similar parallel would be the adoption from sort of data centers and on-prem to the cloud, where some security teams were like, "Oh, we can't use the cloud; it's too insecure." But just the sort of developer productivity and engineering velocity, there was so much value that it was like, "Well, this is happening anyway, so instead, let's try to get ahead of it and enable companies and our engineering colleagues to be even more productive, but just like safely."
100% agree. Yeah, I think we've probably all seen this movie before. I think the difference this time is just the speed at which this is happening just seems even faster than the last couple of cycles. And so I think that sort of means that we're going to need to scramble even faster on the security side to bring not just controls around AI, but also using it right in an appropriate way to enable the business to progress. So, it's going to be a busy few years on the security side, no doubt.
As it always is. Yeah, makes sense. And I was curious, just from a big picture perspective within a company, how do you see companies going about deciding how they're going to use AI? Like what does that process look like for like an average enterprise?
Yeah, I would say, Harmonic has been going, almost a couple of years now. And in the early days, it was pretty scattered and different levels of maturity and opinions in different enterprises. I'd say today it's really consistent conversation I have again and again. It's sort of Groundhog Day for me. I had 32 meetings at RSA, and it was remarkable how similar they all were. So I'd say what I see is the following. So step one for every enterprise is to put an AI policy together. So pretty much everybody's done that at this point. Of course, no one's ever read the policy in the enterprise, and half of them are written by ChatGPT, ironically. So that's sort of part one. Part two is, okay, we're going to get an AI steering committee together. So that's kind of happened now, but the steering committees are not generally doing a lot. And so, why not? Well, the biggest issue is visibility. So they don't know how AI is being used inside their organizations today. Where do they go to try to figure that out? They tend to lean on the SASE tool, right? They go and say, okay, what can I find out from there? The problem with that is you'll get some URLs, but it wasn't built for the purpose of understanding how AI is being used. So it's not typically prompt level visibility. It's not giving you use case understanding about how AI is being used by different teams in the organization. So there is, often an AI category in the SASEs now, but I think that's increasingly misleading because it's probably got 300 apps in it or something like that. If you go and look at any of your SaaS applications these days, they go and look at the sub-processor list and it will be full of AI providers. And I think the distinction of what is and isn't AI is kind of gone away already, right? The boundaries are blurring, but I think it's a fair assumption that pretty much all of the AI, all of the applications out there are using AI. That enterprises are using. So I think the category is pretty misleading. It's very hard then for enterprise to get that visibility picture. And then we come on to control, which is kind of the most important point. How do we stop the sensitive data getting out is kind of the ultimate objective here. And that's a really tough one for enterprise because, again, they may turn to the SASE tool and turn on DLP. But that hasn't worked for the last 20 years, and it's not going to start working in the AI era because we're still relying on regexing and writing rules to spot PII and credit cards and things like that. And that we know that's really sort of false positives everywhere, a bit of a regulatory tick box, but not a real security measure. So that's sort of one area. Another area is to try to label all the data in the business. You try to roll out something like Microsoft Purview. That's typically very challenging for a lot of organizations. And so that's sort of option two. And then, so where I see almost all enterprises is in really option 3 and 4. So option 3 is essentially they standardize on one safe enterprise AI, which could be Copilot or Gemini or OpenAI. And then they just try to block everything else at category level. And it's like, okay, hey, everybody, come and use my one AI that I want you to use. And it sort of makes sense. I'd say 70% of companies we talk to are in that mode. But of course, the problems are fairly obvious there because you're blocking all kinds of apps that people do want to be using. So the business gets frustrated. You end up in exception hell. Security is a blocker again. And by the way, the employees are just finding their ways around that control anyway, as I know from experience of looking into it. So, and they always do, right? If you block them too much. So security is again department a no. I'd say the 30% of companies that are not doing that, I sort of call it YOLO mode that they're in, where they're basically saying, well, this I need to enable this, so I'm just going to selectively block a couple of things like DeepSeek, and then let people have at it, and then cover my eyes and hope that nothing bad happens. So I think that's kind of the state of play, and it's tough out there for security teams, and everyone has these problems, I think.
That makes sense. Thanks for laying it out like that. That makes sense from like, okay, let's create a high level policy, have some sort of steering committee who's reviewing it and moving things forward. And then first, get some visibility and then controls after. Yeah, I like it. Well, I guess last thing, before we get into the demo, I'm curious if there's any like high level info you wanted to share about industries you tend to see using Harmonic the most, or like your largest deployment, or I don't know, any contextual info.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interest is across the board, but FS and tech have been the first couple of verticals that have really leaned in. I think because they are so dependent on rapid adoption of AI to keep pace, but also have a lot of risk around it, whether it's IP or regulatory and customer data related. So a lot of interest from those spaces, but it is it's broader than that too. It's large enterprise takes a little bit longer in some cases, but our biggest deployment now is 110,000 employees, actually over that. So we're a real scale. I haven't quite seen this before, where the interest and conversion rate from first meeting to POC and POC to paid customer is quite as high as we have today. So we have a 100% success rate from POC. I'm sure it won't stay quite that high, but it's pretty extraordinary. Just this week, the start of this week, I've been in 4 different calls that went on to POC. So we are running very hot at the moment. I think just because it's such a burning issue in enterprise right now.
Congrats. Yeah, that's a good signal in terms of building the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, feels that way for sure.
Well, cool. Let's get into the demo if you don't mind sharing your screen.
Hey, so hopefully you can see my screen with a Gemini window open here.
Mm-hmm. I can.
Very good. So this could be any, it could be DeepSeek or ChatGPT or whatever you want. We've got a set of test interventions here on the right. You can see some of the kind of interesting things that we can detect and stop. And we'll go into it some more, but the really key thing about Harmonic, so as I'll show you in a minute, we give you visibility rapidly into all the AI adoption, of course. But the differentiator for us is we've built 21 of our own language models that are focused on data protection. And so rather than having to write rules and label data and all of those things, you can rely on our models out of the box being exceptionally good at understanding sensitive data, leaving the enterprise, and then being able to coach and nudge end users to safe resolutions automatically without putting a big strain on the security team. So that's kind of the core IP. So what I'm showing here just really quickly is a bunch of just our help documentation, but you can see the type of things we can spot, because we can go, we can do PII and we can spot the difference between customer and employee PII, for example, from context, a bit like having a smart human looking at the data. But we can spot other kind of unstructured data types and data loss. So if you think about M&A data, that's something that is obviously very sensitive to private equity firms and many other firms. So I'll just show an example of, you can imagine an employee coming to, in this case, Gemini, but it could be anything. And they're asking for some help from the AI engine here to better articulate some M&A events. So we've got a fictional transaction here, a couple of companies. This is the sort of thing that certainly there's a bunch of firms we're working with that don't want this type of information spread externally. But how do they stop it, right? Because DLP isn't going to help. Data labeling is not going to help. It's very difficult to match on anything in here with kind of rules or those traditional approaches, of course. But the beauty in running Harmonic here is that we actually can identify that type of sensitive data extraordinarily accurately using our language model approach, which is really unique to us. So here we can see Harmonic's popped up, and you can customize this with your own logo, your own color scheme, your own AI policy, your own set of actions that could be different for different scenarios or teams or users and so on. But we're saying, hey, look, we've detected some M&A data, and we can actually explain to the end user what the problem is with that specific piece of data they were trying to push outside of the building, right? So the rest of the time, we can let the employees crack on and use these tools and accelerate adoption. But at the point of data loss, we get in the middle. We sit in line, we can coach and nudge them. And in this case, I'll actually, we're giving the employee override permission in this instance, but you may or may not want to do that in some scenarios. Say things are going into personal accounts or over to China, then maybe you just want to block, right? But in this case, I'm going to enable an ignore. The end user is going to click ignore. And so now the data's gone through to Google and out of the building. So that's kind of the sort of coaching flow. But if we jump into Harmonic world,
quickly before showing the backend dashboard. So basically how it works is Harmonic has a browser extension that is deployed to the enterprise, and then it's flagging this in the browser before it's being sent to the third party. So it's happening locally before it's shared. And this works for both prompts as well as like attachments to prompts.
Exactly right, Clint. Yeah, we cover upload of all the files. If people are putting spreadsheets or PDFs in here with customer data or financial forecasts or other, non-public information, we get in the middle and identify that exceptionally accurately. And then can help automate the resolution of that as well, so that the security team doesn't have to do a lot of work here. So what they can do though is get to the effectively the log and audit of what's been going on. So to look at that last incident here, if I jump into our alerts view, here it is. So here was me. I was using Gemini here. Here was the prompt that I put in. Contain M&A information. And my action was to ignore that intervention. And we can jump in and start to get a lot more information and context around, myself. Turns out I've been raising quite a lot of alerts recently because I'm running a lot of demos. But most employees would not look anything like me. But then you've got that, the sort of timeline audit trail. You can start to see even things like what email address was used as part of this transaction, because it could be you've got employees that are using their personal Gmail accounts on things like ChatGPT versus rather than the corporate plan. So we can even see and write different rules based on that type of scenario too. Part of the benefit of being sat in the browser is we get all that user context, and we can act in that more collaborative way with the end user.
That's nice. Yeah, because you might have different enterprise agreements with these model providers if it's a like enterprise account versus like your personal Gmail sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that might be the way you want it. I mean, in some cases, you're probably quite happy employees using personal accounts as well. Certainly some institutions we work with don't want that happening on their corporate machines. So they're fine to enable a corporate account, but not a Gmail based one. So that's kind of the first flow. But if I kind of show you, so, how does that work? Because the key thing, there's various other folk out there that can give you some sort of shadow AI viewpoint today, and I'll show you that in a minute. But really the uniqueness, the IP in Harmonic is around our ability to spot the sensitive data in a very different way using our language models. So this is just showing you some of the models that we have today and things that are coming. And you can see, we have some industry specific ones, things like, insurance claims data. We've got 3 models for the legal industry already and things like that. But if I jump in and I'll show you that M&A example. So rather than you having to label all the data in the company or write a bunch of rules and regexes that are trying to match somehow on things that look sensitive, the whole beauty of this is that this is us really telling our models that this is what M&A data is. So this data definition remains the same, whoever's M&A data it is. Right? We don't need to train on a specific company's data. Because M&A is M&A, right? In the same way that you can understand that, so can a model. And the same applies to, I mentioned insurance claims. So if you've got, it could be an insurance claim from Hiscox or Chubb or Beasley or whoever it might be. It doesn't, traditionally you'd probably have to train on their data specifically or write rules that match on something to do with them as an identifier or whatever. But in our case, we just know it's an insurance claim, right? And so in the same way that you would know that if you saw one of those companies' insurance claims, you'd know that's what it is, even though you may not have seen one before. Our model's the same. Right. So that's kind of the core principle behind how Harmonic operates is that model-based approach.
Nice. Yeah, that's super cool. And I like that you display both the type of the types of things you detect as well as like the specific prompt, because I feel like that makes it nice and interpretable in a way in terms of like, okay, like why are these things getting flagged? Okay, cool. Here's the definition of what I'm looking for. So I imagine if you wanted to, you could potentially tweak it or customize it to your org, although already it's probably quite good due to the fine-tuned model and prompt. But I like being like, oh, this is how it's thinking about it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the beauty is this works just out of the box as well without, you can then go and obviously apply further tuning and customization of different types. But just the sort of, vanilla deployment is several orders of magnitude above what you can do today with prior tools. And the final bit of this I forgot to mention is we actually tell our model, why this data is important, and that sort of enables it to coach the end users appropriately, which is pretty cool. So it's like having a sort of virtual security analyst there that can coach end users on sensitive data loss, which is almost like on the job security awareness training instead of those once a year videos that everyone clicks through.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. You mentioned having like custom models for detecting these different things. Could you share a little bit more about the like technical implementation, like some of the like challenges you had to overcome, or like how did you make it so precise and fast? Because it did it right there in the browser, like very quickly.
Yeah, it's really lightning fast, and that is a big part of the technical challenge that we've had to overcome. So it's people can probably use AI enough now that they could understand how this might work using one of the major models, right? If you get an O3 level model and it's got time to think about it, it can probably give you some pretty good answers about whether something's sensitive or not at this stage with a bit of help. But of course, that's going to take a long time to come back if you're running it over all of the data going through a business, and it would the resulting bill would be would mean the product would need to cost millions and millions of dollars, I suspect. So the beauty of Harmonic is that it's small language models that we've built. So these models are not going to be very good at writing Shakespeare or solving all kinds of other business challenges, but they are exceptionally good at doing data protection and understanding sensitive material, and that is what they've been designed and tuned to do. And so, for these different types of sensitive data we're picking up, we need a range of different model types and sophistications, and we have a kind of an ongoing process where we have a big workbench of different models and techniques, and we're continually swapping them in and out. And so, at the time of speaking, I think we have some models that are fine-tuned versions of some of Llama and Mixtral and the Amazon Nova suite as well. But we've also got some that we've custom built from the ground up as well. There's some there's some simpler ones as well that we have in there. So it's a real old mix depending on what it is we're trying to do. And so, but the beauty of that is, that it's then super fast. We can run with the same sort of gross margins you get out of a SaaS business. So means our prices are not too extortionate. And and the whole thing just scales now. So we can scale up to hundreds of thousands of users. It also means that from the employee and the customer experience perspective, it's essentially unchanged, right? We roll out and no one notices that anything's happened because it's so lightweight in terms of the browser extension itself.
Nice. That's super cool. I like it. Could you share more about the dashboard and what sort of insights we can get into a sort of company as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll maybe start just by showing the usage and adoption. So that's usually the start of the journey. What I showed you there was the end of the journey where you started to enable the controls that you want. But almost always when we kick off, we're in monitor only mode, and we start to paint a picture of AI adoption in an enterprise. And the average that we see, is approaching 300 applications in AI applications in use by the employees of any given enterprise, and some of them are much more than that as well. And so this is, obviously giving you a little bit of insight into that here, but we can drill in a bit more and start to get a view on most active apps and then newly discovered, a lot of which I've never heard of. But in terms of most active, you'll note we've got a whole bunch of SaaS in there that's Gen AI enabled SaaS. So, the likes of HubSpot and Notion and others are all, of course, using AI on the back end at this point and putting data into OpenAI and others as part of their products. And so, we absolutely see that as in scope. And so essentially pretty much all of SaaS is coming into scope for us at this point and increasingly. We can start to give you breakdowns, outliers of certain apps. And, we like Notion a lot. There's an interesting outlier for us on there. You can start to break down the categories and use cases that people have for AI.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I like that because I think if you were to ask most people, they would be like, okay, cool. Yeah, you've got Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, and you're like, okay, I can name on one hand a few. But to your point, actually, many, many popular SaaS apps like HubSpot, Salesforce, Notion, all of these are also, depending on the part of the app the user is using, are also potentially sharing this information.
That's exactly right. And so I think that distinction, should go away and is going away to some extent. I promise I didn't plan this, but you can see we've picked up that we're using Riverside right now, and the AI transcription for the podcast recording here. So
interesting.
Nice. there we go. But there's a ton of other stuff going on here, of course, in our sort of demo instance. But ChatGPT is kind of the classic, of course, and I think people get kind of wrapped up in having that enterprise agreement with ChatGPT, which I think is great. But what they often forget is that employees are often using their own edition as well, right? In the free edition, in many cases. So that is higher risk because they give themselves the right to train on the data going in. Which may be an issue for, depending on the company and the data. And so we rank that as high risk as a result based on that training declaration. And we start to give sort of profiles on these apps, because that is the other struggle. Enterprises are struggling just to, with this sort of approval hell that's going on when lots of people want to use these different tools if they're blocking right now. So part of what we're doing here is to try to give a, good, quick risk view, enable swift adoption. But this is, giving you some idea, and we can start to look at some of the other things. People have been obviously worrying, I think correctly, about some of the hype around DeepSeek and things like that. And so, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can dig into around these apps. But if I look into some of these other ones that are China hosted, for example, alongside DeepSeek, GenSpark is pretty awesome, and so is Manus. I don't know if you've played around with those at all, Clint, or any of these other apps.
A little bit, yeah, they're very cool.
Yeah, I mean, so Manus has got some really awesome agentic features where it goes off and basically kind of acts as you using a browser to achieve all kinds of interesting goals. You can give it really high level goals. It's pretty neat. And GenSpark does a bunch of stuff, but I think one of the cool things it does is generate really cool presentations for you, a bit like Gamma, which is one of the better known apps that's US hosted, but both of these are China hosted, right? And so pretty tempting as we've seen them pop up in enterprise. I think we're sort of, maybe DeepSeek was the sort of TikTok moment for AI, but I think there's going to be a lot more of them given the competence of Chinese AI development. And obviously depending on who you are and what type of data you've got and where you're allowed, for your data to go, that's probably something that's of interest. That's there's a lot going on there. And then at the high level, this is giving just a bit of a view of the overall exposure that we're seeing, and then our ability to coach and resolve issues with employees. This is a demo portal. The numbers are a little off, but what we would typically see is the employee resolutions go up and then the exposure goes down pretty quickly. We had a really cool one with one of our customers after 90 days where we were showing data exposure had gone down 72%, but AI adoption was up 300% in the business. And that's kind of the coolest thing for me is really enabling that AI adoption. So that's cool. Kind of the overview of kind of the shadow AI and the risks inherent.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing. You kind of showed this a little bit before, but I'm just curious. I think it was showing like outliers. So would it be easy to set up an alert or perhaps periodically review like, okay, cool. Like normally we as a company or individual users are sharing about this much data per day or per week with a given provider. And I could imagine wanting an alert to be like, okay, like if somebody's like 3 to 5x or more than that, like let me know, like, because I'm curious, like why, like what are they doing?
Absolutely, yeah. We've got a few different ways to look at that type of data. I mean, I think there's you can start to spot outliers in terms of the patterns of app users and traffic. We can also start to get a view of the higher risk employees, including, of course, me. In the mix here and see, if we start to see a lot of data loss out of a particular individual, that's obviously a bit of an insider threat issue, maybe, or more likely it's a training issue, to be honest. We're not really here to try to, keep tabs on people doing, who are determined to get information out of the business. We're much more just trying to coach the average person that's just trying to get their job done, right? And so we just want to keep them on the straight and narrow. So sometimes training is going to be required, but we can give these pretty cool summaries. You can start to see the apps and the number of data loss events that are popping up for certain individuals in businesses where that's a problem as well. I think the kind of the coolest thing that we've added most recently is this sort of investigations mode, but it's got a lot of different uses. It enables us. We first thought about this to go beyond the models that we've built, because we're continuing to add models for different industries and use cases, and I think we've got a lot of it covered already, and we'll have more covered. But there's always some edge cases, and so there was one. There's actually a POC that we're kicking off with a company that develops glue and paint, and is worried about the formulas of those items getting out, because that's IP, right? But we're probably not going to build a model for glue and paint formulas just yet, because it's a fairly limited audience compared to some of the other areas. But the cool thing now with what we've built in Investigate is you can have completely custom queries that, if you can express it in plain English, we can run that data definition. And so I've got an fictional example here of a fintech saying, here I want to see all of the activity here where we detect prompts referencing TriScore, EchoRank, or Verdant AI, which are confidential Gen AI powered credit risk projects, and so on. So, you can get down to that level of granularity with this now as well. But that is more, it's a bit like a deep research query like you do in Gemini and OpenAI, where we can go away and it take a little while to come back, but we can give you that kind of view of what's been going on. And then there's other ways you can put some controls in place to address that. But over time, we're going to make this fully real time as well, which is pretty neat. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's super cool. Would another way, at least conceptually, to describe it? So Harmonic is already sort of ingesting all of these prompts being used everywhere in all these different apps. And then what this lets you do is almost sort of like a MapReduce in terms of like, let me write a natural language description of what I'm looking for. And then sort of in parallel, it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to find and bring to you all of the prompts that match basically what that natural language description of what you're looking for.
That is a great way to put it. And so I think that opens up a range of other use cases, of course. And so the sort of thing that you can imagine with something like the EU AI Act coming along, we're going to start worrying about how AI is being used in a business. So, for example, and I've got the example top right here, but if you've got employees that are using AI for automated hiring decisions and, candidate comparison and automated hiring logic, that's pretty problematic in terms of the EU AI Act. And we can literally express that here, and we're going to have some presets for these things here that you can use. But this, we can run that not just for one particular app, right? But we can run it across all of the apps that the enterprise is using and give you that type of visibility, which is extraordinarily powerful, right? Otherwise, it's very, you can't do that with sort of rules and regex approaches. And I think even just blocking apps doesn't work, because if you've got enterprise ChatGPT, people can use it for whatever they want to prompt it with. So we can actually start to provide that type of protection. And of course, it could be thematic around anything that you care about in the enterprise, which starts to give you other use cases, maybe inside a threat. But also, I think kind of some of the upside use cases around ROI and adoption. So you want to understand how different teams are using AI tools, which, you spend all this money on these AI tools. How are they being used, right? And what are the use cases that matter? And I think that can help prompt conversations with the business, because it's sort of, we sort of install our software, we put controls around it, but that's all well and good. But what's the business problem that our employees are trying to solve, and how can we as security folk empower them and give them safe options? And I think that's a big part of what we're going to do here with Harmonic.
Yeah, I like that. Obviously, there's the detecting sort of data leakage or compliance things like you highlight here, but also, I love this idea of, okay, who in different departments are using LLMs and for what? And there's a cool empowering the org story in terms of, oh, hey, we see this one customer service team, oh, they've actually worked out this really cool workflow that we see like one or two people using, but we have 100 of them, and why don't we sort of productionize this workflow and make it, instead of a one-off, like, cool, let's like actually make it a bit more fleshed out and have like sort of a golden path or like a paved road sort of approach where everyone can benefit from this workflow. I like the getting visibility into like how people are using it and what use cases exist, because there's probably a ton of creativity and exciting use cases that we couldn't even imagine, but people are already doing. So yeah, that's a neat use case for helping the whole company be more effective. So I like that.
That's it. Yeah. And I think it's about giving the tools to the security team so they they can go and be an enabler again in that conversation.
Yeah, actually, would it be so if a like some companies have like a platform engineering team who is responsible for helping the rest of engineering be more productive? Maybe it's too soon for this, but I imagine at some point there might similarly be like an AI platform engineering team where it's sort of a centralized team that helps other parts of the organization adopt AI workflows and become more efficient. So if that team were to exist, I imagine they could actually be users of this as well, to then basically find examples of projects that they might want to help scale within the org.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I went along to a demo day in San Francisco where I was encouraged to come and present Harmonic to a couple of companies that were just visiting Silicon Valley to try and soak up some innovation, and see what's going on. And it was interesting. One of them was a large insurance company, and I was presenting not to the security team, but it was to the AI team of both these companies. They're these sort of AI innovation teams that have been spun up, which is not my usual audience, but it was really surprising how well it went down. So we've progressed, with both of those opportunities. And the person running AI at the insurance company said, "Hey, Al, you're never going to believe this, but I don't have access to ChatGPT, and I'm the head of AI." And it turned out that, so I mean, firstly, I thought that was quite interesting. But he and his team were just openly using their own devices to be able to use ChatGPT just outside of IT's control, and it was just extraordinary to me that's going on. And he was talking to me about it. But I suspect it's probably the picture in a lot of organizations. And so I think over time, like security and how we think about the way software is used in companies is going to need to shift to be very much aware of the use cases and helping to enable companies to adopt, because otherwise people are just doing it anyway. Yeah
well, that makes sense, and this seems like a great approach at making it happen safely. Well, this has been great. I'm curious, what sort of exciting plans in the future can you share about how things are evolving?
Yeah, I think we're trying to stay very, very close to the customers on their immediate requirements and concerns. And so I think there's a few things. One area, like, we are absolutely covering everything that goes through the browser in an exceptionally straightforward, friendly way. But our core IP around our models is obviously there's nothing that really limits it to the browser, and nothing that limits it to a particular subset of apps. So we're obviously extending. So within the browser, we're going to extend our coverage to more and more applications. We'll have more risk types as well in the mix. But I think outside of that, there's opportunity here. We have an API that's coming imminently that will be exposing our models over API, that we can plug them into other bits of the security stack. One of the areas that we're excited about working on imminently is some of the more engineering-centric use cases that maybe don't go through the browser. So that's something that's very much in scope for us. And then beyond that, I think we've had all kinds of interesting conversations with other companies that would like to use our API in a variety of ways. So expect to see us and our models popping up in some other places too. But I do, for us, the browser is the focus right now, because it really is the main aperture for these AI apps, and it gives us that visibility into the prompt data and that friendly relationship with the end user, which is where we're going.
Nice. Well, that's super cool. I look forward to seeing it happen. Alastair, thanks so much for your time. Where should people keep up with you or Harmonic?
Yeah, I'm pretty noisy on LinkedIn these days, so pretty easy to find on there. And yeah, harmonic.security is the domain. We're pretty wide open in terms of how we demo and show the product. There's a lot of stuff online on the website and demo videos and things like that. So there's plenty to access there. But obviously, I'd love to speak to anyone that's interested. So feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'm learning every day as we all are, and excited to try and make the security team the heroes and enablers of this AI wave.
I love that. I'm glad you're working on it. Well, thanks so much for your time, and thank you anyone watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Clint. You too. Take care.
All right. Take care.